Why would I go ahead and give individuals like that more material to be like, oh, I really want to find something to piss Taylor off? I'm not playing that game because I don't entertain bigots. Hello, fellers and dwellers. Welcome to another episode of Dwell On It, where you ask questions, I answer those questions. We work towards creating a better, safer, more inclusive place for trans individuals and the rest of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And I suppose everyone who is opposed to that can wear their bigotry badge and be on the wrong side of history for as much as I care. Even when it comes to the wrong side, we can go ahead and say that every side needs a loser, so they can just own that one and call it a win, right? Let them have it. Before we get started, I have three major asks. One, please subscribe, okay? What subscribing does is it influences the algorithms from the social media platform that you're watching this on to promote this for other people's channels too. That whether it's showing up on suggested videos, their homepage, and so on, if they have related likes or anything like that, please make sure to do me a huge favor and help influence the machine, I guess we can call it, so this message is more visible with passive effort and gets visible and heard by more and more people out there. And as I mentioned about people who like videos, do me a major favor. Hit like or love or whatever it is on whatever you're watching this on, because it does the same thing in a similar-ish way, that it shows that this is a wanted video to be seen so that other individuals who are following things like tags and whatever will want to be encouraged to watch this video too. Again, a passive gain to help support this message to be heard by others. And three, share. Whether you share from your own methods, whether you're copying pasting links, putting it in email or whatever it would be, or using the share buttons that are available on the social media platforms, to share it with your networks, share it with your social media network, share it with your text messages, share it with family, friends, people you bump into on the street, I guess. But seriously, by being able to help promote this message only helps get this message heard. I may as well add this as a soft plug since I am going to be participating in this run on June 5th, and since this is my grab bag, I talked about it in the last episode, so I'm not going to dwell on it more than necessary, but I am trying to raise $1,100 to support women's wellness programs out of Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. Do me a huge favor if you would like to contribute. There's going to be a donation link down below. It is a secure online donation. You can contribute any dollar amount that you want, and as I mentioned, it is in the interest of supporting women's mental health awareness, women's wellness programs, and anything that you contribute will help create meaningful change. So let's get into this. Are there any events in your life that helped encourage you to transition? Yes, it's funny actually mentioning Run for Women. Backstory, a long time ago, I sent an email to Clinic for looking about trans healthcare, because I've got a big thing about picking up the phone and making outbound phone calls, and I was really hoping to, just get started by email, and it turns out that the intake process wasn't done by email. I was given a phone number to call, and that really frustrated me, so I sat on that for Lord knows how long. And what I used to do as a tradition after Run for Women is there's a resort up north, a few hours away, that I would go to after the Run for Women in years past to pretty much have a small vacation, a little getaway, just a place to kind of get away and reset. It would be Hecla. If anyone's in the area and familiar with it, I would go up to Hecla and just take in the sights and the scenery and just follow a tradition that I had for a period of time. And then COVID, of course, came in the way. So anyway, after one of the Run for Women events, the one in 2019, after the event, I'm driving up north to, get away from the city, just get away from life for a bit and just enjoy my getaway. I was doing a lot of self-reflection about where I was in life, and I knew that there would be no better time than the present to just finally accept my own reality. I still didn't pick up the phone and call, and by pick up the phone and call, I want to be clear that it was with Bluetooth. But anyway, it didn't happen until I was actually driving back from the resort that I finally decided to call that number that I was sitting on for Lord knows how long to enter myself into trans healthcare. So actually, and I do give credit to the Run for Women event. I don't know what exactly it was that motivated me to do that, but I think it honestly just had to do with finally being away from things and just being on the highway and just having that time with myself, like literally that time away from everything and just saying, you got to do it. And they did it. Now, when it came to me coming out, I will say that I came out incredibly abruptly, directly related to George Floyd's murder. I do know I've spoken about that before, so I will link a video about that so that you can check it then. The short version of it was because of like our social crisis that was happening in the world. I couldn't stay idle anymore. As much as I had this idea in my head that I was just going to have slow moving potato mode be my transition, the way that the world was operating and being like, well, the police are rude, but this is the exact same thing that happened years ago, right? Like, systemic oppression is a real thing, right? Police brutality is a real thing. Colin Kaepernick got kicked out of the NFL for standing up or kneeling about police brutality, and I was already months into HRT, so that it was already starting to get to that point of being like, okay, changes are starting to happen. And my birthday honestly was right around the corner. I was expecting to come out on my 40th birthday, but in this case it would have been right on the doorstep of my 39th birthday. All of those things happening at once was the time for me to just say that I got to do it. I have to come out now, right? And be part of this visibility of, we need to raise awareness that oppression is a real thing. We need to raise awareness that discrimination is a real thing. We need to raise awareness that white nationalism, white supremacy, police brutality, we need to raise awareness. It is a very real thing. And the only way that I was able to do that as effectively as I knew I could is if I allowed myself to be honest with myself, to be honest and authentic to the world around me too. So those, I guess we can say, are two major events that was like the finally get to the point of making the phone call and getting things started, and then the acceptance to actually get out into the world. Does being on estrogen change how beautiful things appear? I've never considered that. I feel things more than ever before. In a past life, I was perpetually miserable. I'd have little sprinkles of happiness or joy just based on an event, but it wouldn't take long to just automatically reset to being in my own head about not being where I want to be. I have a completely different appreciation of the world around me. I find myself being more connected with things that I suppose one would define as beauty, even if it comes to interpersonal relationships. I've always just liked art, but I've just seen more into it. I find beauty in things that I've never seen before, but I don't know if that's related to estrogen or just being happy. So I think that might be a more appropriate way to ask the question. Does transitioning change how beautiful things appear? I would say yes, because I'm no longer surrounded by a gray fog. I'm no longer surrounded by the perpetual desire to just not wake up again. Transitioning changes how beautiful things appear because it helps identify a beautiful life. I could keep repeating the same line for an hour. I don't want to make an episode that long, and it'll probably bore people. But the reality is that I've never been happier. I've said so many times in so many places that every day has been the best day of my life ever since I accepted myself. And as every day has gone on, and there's still up days and down days, right? There's days where you still feel the feels and all that other fun stuff, but I'm happy to feel the feels now. I'm happy to be able to connect with whatever it is that I'm feeling, because all of that fog of despair and frustration and sorrow are gone, and now the feels are like part of what life is. And if that's not beautiful, what is? I would much rather be sad today than sad in yesteryear, because this sadness is my reality being sad, not just a layer of sad on top of not being able to reach where I wish I could get to. I don't know how to answer it in terms of a tangible way. Like, I'll be honest, when I see flowers, I still see flowers. Hey, if I see a color, it's still a color. But I allow just a different version of that emotion, because now it is unmitigated. It's so much more pure than anything ever before. So I wouldn't credit that to estrogen, but I would credit that to transitioning. That is such an insightful question. Wow, my gosh, wonderful question. Thank you so much for that. That is crazy insightful. What stereotypes about trans women annoy you the most, and why? You know what? I know my audience, and I'm not falling for it. The reason why I say that is this. I appreciate the honesty that this question might have, and I underline the word might. right? I understand that there might be people who just genuinely want to know. It's like, hey, Taylor, what frustrates you? And then at the same time, some questions that I receive are whatevers. And I am not falling for the bait. I'm not falling for it, sorry. For anyone going, huh, what? Let's put it this way. I'm very familiar with my audience, and I'm very familiar with the fact that I continue to be stalked and harassed regularly by a network of bigots who choose to try to pretty much defame me. They try to defame me, they chase me with libel, they stalk, they harass, I've received death threats. I can go on and on and on. Let's put it this way. If you're legitimately curious about what I'm talking about, in my description is my Twitter profile. Take a look at any single post I make and take a look at a routine network of bigots who continue to allege that I'm a convicted pedophile from Edmonton when I'm 100% not that person. My pre-transition dead name was very similar to a convicted pedophile, but middle names matter and birthdays matter too. And it's no surprise, especially considering our current events. Winnipeg police don't do anything about it. RCMP don't do anything about it, even though it is a consistent, regular, targeted, deliberate harassment, deliberate hate-based abuse. Why would I go ahead and give individuals like that more material to be like, oh, I really want to find something to piss Taylor off? I'm not playing that game because I don't entertain bigots. However, like I said, should you choose to be entertained, especially if you have the ability to be mindful about not getting triggered or anything like that, take a look in the description, take a look at my Twitter profile, and look at all of my posts. It is like clockwork. When I put a post in there, it's no time until a network of bigots show up and continue to amplify this idea that I am that convicted pedo, because heaven forbid that bigots actually use whatever neurons exist in there. But I suppose you need to have more than one neuron to actually have something that qualifies as a brain, so I'm not playing that game. Anyway, as I mentioned, totally take a look at my Twitter profile, right? Take a look at any post, take a look at the comments. It's pretty easy to see any individuals that are purely bigoted, full of hate, and fully ignorant. And if you happen to care enough to help do anything about it, please do, right? Whether you want to go ahead and address that with authorities that you happen to know personally, if you happen to want to influence any sort of politician about creating change when it comes to online abuse and harassment, when it comes to even trying to encourage social media platforms to mitigate that type of abuse by actually paying attention to fully hateful attacks, help out, right? Why not? Bigotry is a fact of life, and like I said, I choose to not entertain them. Simple as that. Are you a planner or more spontaneous? Mostly a planner, and sometimes very much to a fault, because I not only am a planner, but I find comfort also in planning for pretty much as many scenarios as possible that are slightly realistic, so that I know that I've got all my bases covered, so I don't find myself uncomfortable or, lacking an asset in some way or whatever. So I'm very much a planner for that type of stuff, like especially when it would come to sports tournaments, for example. The amount of food and drink and whatever that I would bring would be through the roof. And, if I'd be camping or even going on a trip or something like that, the amount of clothes that I would bring, at least in a past life, but it would be the exact same to this day, is just an obnoxious amount more than what needs to be. But my logic behind that was like, I have the stuff. It would be really frustrating to be at something and be like, man, that thing I really wish I had right now is at home. I could have brought it. It doesn't hurt me to bring it, and such and such. So that's pretty much how I go. I do the best that I can to use my calendar, for example, to just plan ahead for, events or whatnot too, which is a big change to how I used to be in a past life. I find a lot more comfort in planning. I certainly don't stick by the book for it, but I like having things laid out for me instead of just winging it. What have been the scariest parts of your transition? What were the most exciting? I feel like I answered this before, but I don't remember it at all. Well, I'll answer it again. Scariest part of my transition, I would have to say, is feeling like I might have had cancer on my liver. What I mean by that was earlier in my transition, I was having more frequent lab tests, right? Checking, blood to check levels and everything like that as well. I feel it was October 2020, but nonetheless though, I ended up getting a follow-up call from clinic. We were talking about what they were seeing, and I was asked to get an ultrasound on my liver. The reason why that was scary to me was when it comes to needing an ultrasound, the first thing in my head was like, well, what can't you figure out with a blood test or like a pee test or anything like that? And so obviously if they wanted to get an ultrasound, there's more to it. So, I hop on Dr. Google because that fixes everything, obviously. And unfortunately, the most that I saw that would be any sort of like hint or suggestion about what could possibly be the reason for an ultrasound would have been for something like fatty liver disease. And I assure you that fatty liver disease is not on the table for me. I'm not gonna lie, in the recent past I've snacked a little more than lately, but I've also just been pretty overwhelmed with, just projects and this and that. But otherwise, in general, I only drink coffee and water, right? I try to exercise every day. I've slumped a little bit lately, but I still consider myself active and fit. When it comes to snacks, typically my snacks are like fruit or something super low calorie, just more of like a belly filler than like a palate enjoyer. When it comes to that I don't consume much to encourage any sort of like fatty liver. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. I hardly consider myself sedentary. So like all of those, I'm like, okay, well, that can't be that. So what else can it possibly be? And of course, Dr. Google's taking me to things that would be cancer or something in that neighborhood. And that was really scary because like, okay, this is frustrating. And aside from the obvious reason why it could be scary, other thoughts in my head would be, what if I can't transition because my body can't take it? That was even more scary because like, okay, well, I'll just have to wait for answers. I can't do anything about it. Having that in your head of like, is this not gonna actually be a thing anymore or whatever? And when I say can't transition, like for me, a medical transition, it helps me feel like me. And to think that might have been a possibility was incredibly frightening. Fortunately, everything's fine. For all intents and purposes, my liver hiccuped. I guess is the best way to put it. Glitched. Burped, I don't know. But yeah, no, everything for all intents and purposes is fine. And that's easily the scariest part of my transition. The most exciting part of my transition, honestly, was just like all the times that I'd feel like a moment of euphoria. I commented on the word euphoria before. I've never really connected with that, but it makes sense to use it now. Just seeing the things that bring me happiness. The first time that I looked in the mirror and I just saw myself and I was happy, right? Instead of like being super critical about myself, to get to points where it was easy and comfortable to be able to say I'm a trans woman without tripping over words, to feel like am I authentic with this or not, or so on. And just all of the steps of self-acceptance. There was something tangibly to say. It'd be when I received my birth certificate, because that for all intents and purposes was my finish line, to be legally recognized as Taylor Elizabeth LaChrist. I'll do the best I can to link to previous episodes that I know that I've mentioned, stuff like that along the way. Easily those two things stand out in terms of scariest and most exciting. Most exciting, as I mentioned, birth certificate, and the scariest was the idea that I possibly have like cancer or like liver failure or something like that. So have you ever dealt with depression, or anyone else that dealt with it? Absolutely. Depression is not uncommon, and frankly this is a great time to plug that fundraiser that I was just talking about when it comes to supporting women's mental health and women's wellness programs through Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. Fantastic plug. When it comes to dealing with depression though, I remember quite a while ago, 2016, I was going through a situation with somebody who was really close to me at the time, and we had a collapse. Let's call it a collapse. And my world just blew up. I felt like my body just completely decomposed, and my foundation and my understanding of life, my understanding of love, my understanding of happiness, boom, gone. And a friend of mine took me to her doctor, who ended up diagnosing me with depression. And it was a depressive episode though. In hindsight, it wasn't chronic depression. However, that's not to dismiss what depression can do to an individual. If my friend took me to her doctor, obviously it's affecting my quality of living. I've been in crisis. I went into crisis in December of 2019, and that was dealing with, again, right, depression-esque feelings, where I was struggling with just connection with people, and when it comes to feeling isolated, and a lot of it had to do, of course, with being trans, by not feeling like I was allowing myself to come out to other people, and I was getting so exhausted of not living my best life, and it was taking an absolute toll on me. And a friend took me to CRC to just kind of get triaged, checked out, which took me to the CSU, where at the CSU, and acronyms, by the way, CRC, Crisis Recovery Center, CSU, Crisis Stabilization Unit, and when it came to that, the CSU was pretty much just a tiny getaway from life again. And when I was there, I stayed in my room and I asked nurses there to just give me all the material that they have, everything as to like what could possibly have brought me here, right? And eventually I ended up getting a stack of brochures and pamphlets and like exercises and whatever, and I'm burning through as many as I could because a lot of them were just common sense to me, and then there were some that really grabbed me that I got stuck on the pages because I weren't able to answer the questions, and a lot of them had to do with being able when it comes to connecting with others and whatnot, which obviously led to depressive feelings and so on. As I've mentioned, chronic depression I have not dealt with. I've never been diagnosed for something along those lines, but I absolutely empathize with anybody who does have chronic depression, and I know straight up you're not alone. When it comes to others who say they have depression, they take that very seriously because depression can take you to terrible places, and if someone shares that they have depression or that they are feeling depressed and any other form of mental wellness, I take that incredibly seriously, because for someone to expose themselves and allow that to come out is incredibly courageous of them, because of the fear of getting judged or not taken seriously or dismissed or so on. I take that incredibly seriously. And so for anyone who shares that with me, I feel gratitude that I feel trusted enough to be able to have that shared with me about. I do the best that I can to always try to educate myself better when it comes to individuals who deal with depression, anxiety, and so on, when it comes to the entire gamut of mental health concerns. And as I mentioned with myself, that with myself as a trans woman, the amount of feelings that you experience that are byproducts of being a trans person in a society that is not trans inclusive, it comes along for the ride. It's almost a badge that gets defaulted on you. You're going to experience it. I hate saying it like that. It's so difficult to avoid. As I alluded not terribly long ago, as a matter of fact, when it comes to the grayness, when it comes to like this transitioning help, find beauty in things. Yes, absolutely. All I felt was like the gray clouds, and I never had the courage to do worse. Let's put it that way. But I would go to bed and I would hope I would just never wake up. Tell me what that is, right? Like, it was difficult, and like I said also earlier, that there's still days where you feel the feels. It's so much easier to manage now, and I've never been happier. So yes, I have dealt with depression. I completely understand when people are dealing with depressive episodes too. And honestly, especially over the last couple of years, it has been an incredibly difficult and surreal time. It has been too much on too many people, and I hope that as time goes on, that gets recognized, taken significantly more seriously, and solutions are created so that accessibility for mental wellness solutions is something that is freely available for those who need it the most. I'm gonna wrap up on this one. I really like the vibe of this episode, if I had to be honest. I really like the insightfulness and actually kind of like poking at the feels there. Obviously, it's just what the grab bag delivers, and thank you, grab bag, for being super random this time. When it comes to the questions, if you have any of your own, please add them to the comments or send them by DM, depending on the platform that you're on, and I will take them and I will add them to the grab bag, and I'll be more than happy to answer them in a future episode. As I mentioned at the top as well, do a huge favor for not only me, but trans individuals everywhere. Subscribe, please subscribe. Share the message that you like this channel and you want more people to see it. On the topic of please like this video if you enjoyed the content. Adding a like gives the chance for other viewers to see that this is content that is recommended to be seen by others. So please do me a huge favor for that. Subscribe, like, and then share. Use the share button or use however method you're most comfortable with so that you can get it to as many people as possible. Sharing the video gets other people to hear the video, obviously. And by doing that, that helps make sure that this message gets heard and seen by as many people as possible, which helps get the trans community and the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, by extension, the visibility that it has a right to. So again, to recap, subscribe, like, share wherever that button is on the screen. Do me a huge favor, hit all three, help us out, and you're doing the best you can from sitting where you are, and I'm going to appreciate it from sitting where I am. No questions there. As I mentioned in the description, take a look at a couple links. Take a look at my Twitter profile. Full disclosure, you're going to see a whole bunch of toxic bullshit. If you want to do a favor and help me out, please do the things that you feel you need to do to help get rid of bigots and trolls and all that other nonsense, but otherwise it's just a bunch of useless individuals thinking that they're creating change for their own little bigoted world over there, so whatever. Otherwise, please, a little lower in the description, you're going to find a link to a campaign hosted on New Mode, and that one I keep talking about all the time, where we can go ahead and take probably less than 30 seconds. Add your name, your email address, your postal code, and you are sending a message to elected officials in your area so that they can encourage businesses, organizations, and companies in your neighborhood, in your area, in your jurisdiction to be influenced to operate with a higher standard of corporate social responsibility, so that a community that is more supportive towards the 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals is developed, which obviously helps make a stronger community, fundamentally helps make a more profitable community too if people want to talk about business. And when you're done, please share that too. Remember, add your voice, and you can add your voice 3 times a day so that, again, elected officials know that you take it seriously and you do want to see a better community that surrounds you. I hope everyone has a great night. Have a great rest of your week. As always, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I'm very grateful that you took the time with me today. And for now, I will talk to you later.